George Rathman, the founder of Amgen, says you must become a true biotech company. You must have walked through the valley of death, meaning near bankruptcy, several times. And by the way, when that happens, it really builds character.
Every once in a while, I come across a story in drug development that isn't just about science, but about human resilience, about what it takes to spend decades pursuing a single idea when the world isn't always sure you're right, about conviction.
The real vision here is that in the future, I won't say all, but the majority of cancers, instead of 3 treatment modalities in cancer, you will have 4.
Cancer, as we all know, remains one of the most complex and devastating challenges in medicine. And while immunotherapy has revolutionized treatment for many patients, head and neck cancer, with its delicate balance between survival, organ preservation, and quality of life, still presents a unique and pressing unmet need.
TNF alpha is one of the components in Multikine. TNF alpha kills the cancer cells, and the antigen specific to the tumor that you have or that I have is released. The immune response now becomes specific to your antigen and in my body to my antigen.
And it's a bold idea. Instead of waiting until after the tumor is removed, prime the immune system to fight back right at the very beginning.
Today, the first treatments are surgery, radiation, chemo. They should be our drug first, and then surgery, radiation, and chemo. If you use our drug, you can eliminate the chemo.
My guest today has been at the center of one of the longest and most ambitious immunotherapy trials in history. For more than 25 years, Geert Kersten has led Cell-Sci, a company developing Multikine, a first-of-its-kind immunotherapy designed to be given before surgery. Today's episode is about one of those stories. In this conversation, I want to understand science, yes, but also the psychology. What keeps a leader committed to a vision for decades? How do you carry the weight of setbacks, the doubts of others, and still keep going? And what would it mean for patients and for the field if this approach finally finds its place in cancer care? So whether you are a scientist, a clinician, an investor, or simply someone fascinated by the human stories behind science, this episode is for you. Geert, welcome to Drug Diaries. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to say something from the heart. Over 93% of the people who watch this podcast regularly haven't subscribed. And listen, I get it. Life is busy. You click, you watch, you move on. But if you've ever felt like this show brings you value, if it has made you think, sparked a new idea, introduced you to something inspiring, then I have a small favor to ask. Please hit that subscribe button. It might not seem like much, but to me, it means everything. This podcast has always been a labor of love. No sponsors, no script, just honest conversations with people trying to make a difference in the world of healthcare. And your support, your one click, helps me keep doing that. It helps more people discover these voices. It helps this community grow. So if you're here, if you believe in this, please consider subscribing. Thank you for being here. Now let's get into the episode. Geert, welcome to Drug Diaries.
Thank you so much, and what a lovely introduction you gave us.
Thank you. But you have been at Cell-Sci for decades, usually long for...
I started off as the youngest CEO in the industry. Wow. And now look at my hair, it's gray hair. I'm grandchildren.
That's unusually long for a biotech CEO. What has kept you committed to this vision for so long?
It's kind of something that needs to be done, right? Just about everybody's had experience with cancer. The family, friends of family, the doctor always says, well, we can do this, we can do that, and then we should be fine. It's a lot of bullshit. They don't know. They will combine surgery, radiation, chemo. So many patients, so many family members of people who died said, I don't know what killed my mother or my father, whether it was the cancer drugs or the cancer. That's a terrible, terrible assessment that the medicine may have been responsible for the death. What we're forgetting in cancer is our own immunity. You're alive, I'm alive. We're fine, right? The immune system's keeping us alive. At some point we'll die, but hopefully of natural causes down the road. Why are we not using the immune system? So we were basically, I think, pretty much one of the first in the world to start with that idea. It makes sense, right? Why not use our own immune system? It keeps us alive. But people said, oh, it's a stupid idea. If the immune system fought cancer, you would never get cancer. I said, that makes no sense. You just have to figure something out. And by the way, we have. We figured out cancer is like a terrorist. We have plenty of police to fight terrorists. What the police needs is the intel. What does the terrorist look like? Where can the terrorist be found? Then you need to get that terrorist before they set off the bomb or do the horrible things, right? Not afterwards. So, but again, there's all kinds of monetary interest. And it's actually a little more complicated than that. The fastest way to bring a drug to market is to give it to dying cancer patients. Because if they normally die in 6 months and with your drug they die in 7.5 months, you're great, you're wonderful. Your study didn't take long, didn't cost much money, and you can now charge unbelievably ridiculous amounts. So why would you want to go and do what we're doing, which is we are activating your immune system to fight the cancer before surgery, radiation, and chemo, which are the normal first treatments, have destroyed it. Wouldn't you want to reorganize the army before it goes into battle, not after it has been destroyed in the first battle? But that seems so logical to people now. When we first started, they didn't accept the fact that immunotherapy could be of importance. Now they do, it's the future. They didn't accept the concept that you have to go first. And by the way, most cancer drugs cannot go first because they require months of treatment. We can get into that later on, but you can only have 3 weeks because you cannot delay the surgery and all the other treatments. Important advice to anyone listening. If you or anyone in your family has a serious cancer, do not play around. The data is clear. A delay in surgery and other treatments will worsen your outcome. So if you think you have another treatment that will do better, make sure it really will do better. Because a delay, if you wait for another month or 2 or 3 or 6 months, the chances that you will survive are much reduced. Anyway, the bottom line is our drug eliminates tumors in 3 weeks with no toxicity. No one else can do that.
And Gert, coming from a background in law and finance rather than medicine, what first convinced you that immunotherapy could change the trajectory of cancer care?
If you think that it's all about science and that a good science will win, I have a bridge to sell you. I can choose where you can, Memphis, I don't know, Washington, D.C., New York City. I'll sell you any of the bridges. There are many wonderful scientists that die because they cannot find funding. So in fact, my background in law and finance has probably saved the company more times than I could. Let me put it this way. When I started, I had this wonderful vision. If you do something to help mankind, people are going to help you. Now, not true. Barbarians at the gate. You may remember that book about KKR taking over the RJ and Nabisco. Essentially, if people find a way to destroy you, to make money quickly, that is the path many of them will take. That is my function. I have found these unbelievably smart and wonderful people doing the work, and my job is that of the protector. And therefore, law and finance are very important.
What has been the hardest personal or professional moment in this journey?
Oh, I don't know.
What you through?
I can't even tell you. There's so many of them where I just had no idea how we were going to continue, right? It's a cash flow negative business. You have no money coming in. If you sell the drug before you get permission, you go to prison, okay? Company gets shut down. Wall Street plays unbelievable shorting games. We have had times in our stock. I remember one time our stock was so heavily shorted that the people shorted it paid 142% on an annualized basis to borrow the stock. 2 months ago, it was 104%. That doesn't happen because, just by itself. It happens because you're targeted. There have been times when we won, and those have been fun times because, the shorts cry and they lose a lot of money. There have been other times when we ended up crying and losing a lot of money. So there are many. If anyone tells you that things are easy, that things are handed to you, I call bullshit.
Talk me through one of those moments when you almost felt like giving up. This is getting too intense and you can't carry on like this. And how did you overcome that moment?
It's never been about the science, right? Everything we've always done has shown that this drug works. But the money still is in dying cancer patients. Our goal is to essentially, it's a dangerous statement to make, but cure people. That's our goal. If your tumor doesn't come back, then you're cured. Our data showed that in the people who respond very well to this drug, at 5 years, which is considered to be a cure period, 73% of the patients are alive, versus 45%. And that's accompanied by unbelievably good statistics, p-value of 0.0015, hazard ratio of 0.35. Anyone in the business knows saying this is much better than you need for an approval. It's about money. It's always about money. It's like everything else in life. And, sometimes what is really frustrating is the illogical aspect. I would say last year was a very difficult time period, and still is for many biotech companies, because investors are focused on AI or crypto. It's very hard to beat the stories of AI companies. Crypto companies suddenly being up 20 times in value, 50 times. It's unbelievable. Everybody wishes they bought that company, and that one trade alone would make their life. So that is the greatest difficulty, because you could be curing cancer. During one of those times, you announce that you cured cancer, no one would care. From this, your stock wouldn't move, and it's your currency. That's how you fund the studies. When you go to regulators, you're not allowed to talk about money. They consider that to be undue pressure.
Yes.
Right? So when they ask you for another study, unfortunately, and by the way, even the regulators, there are changes. It's a pendulum. They become more lenient, and then they become stricter again. And we experienced that. It was part of our story here. Wall Street then, if they know you have to do another study, knows you have to raise more money. So what do? Is they short. You cannot change it. The government's not going to step in and change it no matter what they say. You have to fight the battle as much as you can. As I said, we have won battles like that. We have lost battles like that. I would say the period from last summer to May of this year was an extremely bad period. It was because essentially the focus on AI and crypto became so narrow.
Yeah.
The Mag 7s attracted all of the money, so therefore there was no money left for the biotech sector. In fact, the biotech sector has undergone the worst performance ever in the last 5 years. So they're all down. I can point to companies that got approvals last year, down 80%. That's why we're going to Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Got to go with people like you, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Wise decision, I'd say.
You have to accept that things are not going to be handed to you. You have to fight for them. You have to think outside of the box. There's so many stories, things I've had to do that other people have never done, then save the company. Normal things. If you think inside the box, if you think it's only about science, it's not.
Agreed. And Gerd, for listeners new to this field, what exactly is Multikine? And even before we dive into Multikine, can you take a few minutes to explain what is head and neck cancer and what makes it so debilitating and devastating for patients? And then we can dive into Multikine and how is it different from... Yeah.
It's the sixth biggest cancer in the world, from under your nose down to your clavicle. Okay, about 900,000 new cases. It is actually on the rise again. It is caused mainly by smoking and drinking, and now there is a newly established relationship with HPV, human papillomavirus. The worst part of head and neck cancer is in the oral cavity, where HPV is not a factor. It's generally smoking and drinking. It's about half of head and neck cancer. In fact, our study is focused on the worst part. So we figured if you show benefit in the worst of already something very, very bad, then people will start using it elsewhere also. So the treatments are horrendous. Surgeries there's a standard of care worldwide if you're stage 3 or 4, which is quite advanced. 2/3 of the patients approximately are stage 3 and 4. The first treatment is supposed to be surgery. Well, these are not little surgeries. You take a tumor, maybe make it this big, put it on your side. You have to cut like an inch around on the whole thing, right? So they go through your bone with a saw, take your tongue out. We're talking 15, 16-hour surgeries. So there are many people who commit suicide even if they survive the cancer because everything is messed up.
Distorted.
Already horrible. However, that wasn't enough, because in cancer, it's just like everything else. You can prepare for everything else in the world. The things that will get you are the things that you couldn't foresee, right? In cancer, it's the cells that you cannot see. Yeah. So I cut wide around the tumor, but I think I got it, is what the doctor will say, right? I did my best, blah, 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 all of that stuff. And then recurrence comes up because there were some cells left on the outside, which you can't find. There's no technology. So then they added radiation, and that improved survival a little bit. And then in certain people, they decided to add chemotherapy along with the radiation, which is so bad that the studies even led to the death of people. The toxicity is horrendous when you give radiation and chemo at the same time. So that's the treatment. And no matter what you do, every other person will die. So as one doctor said, 2 people walk in the door. I know one of them is going to die. However, I do not know which one. And it really hasn't gone anywhere. So then there was one success in the last 10 years, basically, in head and neck cancer. It's the super drug Keytruda, and it was approved for dying head and neck cancer patients, where it gives them 2.5, 3 months of extra life. But other than that, it's a very tough cancer. So what are we doing? Our drug is a mixture of cytokines, multikine, many cytokines. The cytokines regulate our immune system, interleukins, interferons, growth factors. We are not playing God. For me, this concept that we can take something as perfect, as unbelievable as our own body and how it works, and that we can make it better to defeat the cancer is a concept that makes no sense. Right. Because you and I are alive and our body regularly fights something off. So we set out to copy, as much as one can do, a healthy person's immune system. Very complicated. We honestly had no idea initially. We had to build our own manufacturing facility near Washington, D.C., and we've spent well over $200 million on it. It's been delays, it's been difficult, etc. But FDA wanted it. And if FDA wants it, then yes, sir, yes, ma'am, that's what you do. The idea is that you administer this in supraphysiological doses. Many cancer drugs are given IV. Well, why? If you have a cancer in your tongue and you're about to lose your tongue, why do I need to stimulate your immune system in your knee? It makes no sense. I need to stimulate the immune system locally, right? In the area of the tongue. Otherwise, I stimulate everywhere, and then I cause toxicities and problems elsewhere. So we said, no, you need to administer it locally, which is also different, by the way, right? Yeah. And by the way, I've had pharma companies telling me we're not interested because we're selling to nurses administer our product. And if a nurse cannot administer it, then we're not interested. Well, that company was purchased for a very low price. Obviously, that was not the right idea, because I think it should be driven by what is the benefit. If you can save lives, you can charge, it's justified, and your company should do well. You shouldn't be concerned about who gives the drug. So anyway, then comes the next issue. So we give our drug locally, not into the tumor, but around the tumor, 12, 3, 6, or 9 o'clock. Why? You have to worry about the tumor. No. What kills you is not the tumor that gets cut out. What kills you is the cells that remained and survived around the tumor, and that then survived the radiation and the chemotherapy. Because radiation and chemo don't really get you down to zero mathematically. So we administer 12, 3, 6, or 9 o'clock, and we administer below the ear to drain into your lymph nodes, because if any cancer cells survive in your lymph nodes, not good. We'd love to do this for a long time period. Ethically, and you need to get approval for this, obviously, from hospitals and regulators, they don't want you to delay the surgery, because it's known that for these stage 3 and 4 cancers, that if your surgery is delayed, your outcome will be worse. Right. Now, yes, I might say, the UK has at least 6 weeks and blah, blah. Doesn't matter. FDA says 3 weeks is the maximum, because it takes 3 to 4 weeks in the United States. And so that's the limitation that everybody faces. And by the way, that is why so many studies with successful cancer drugs that work in dying cancer patients, where the drug is taken for 3 months, 4 months, whatever, and extends their life, it cannot extend life in 3 weeks before surgery. It's too short a time period. Yeah. Now there's one more consideration. Our drug's non-toxic. The toxicity given to these head and neck cancer patients from a combined treatment of surgery and radiation is already so excessive, some will die. You can't give it. Even the many older people with diseases cannot be given the addition of chemotherapy, because it may kill them. Right? So to be adding any more toxicity to all of that would just kill people. Our drug doesn't have the toxicity. Our drug is body-owned. It's a copy of your and my immune system. It's given locally, so it doesn't affect the other systems. It doesn't have any nasty side effects or anything popping up somewhere else. Now, the last point to consider, if someone dear to you has cancer, if they're at the point where there's nothing that can be done for them, You will probably take them, if you have the money, to, I don't know what, Mexico, Russia, anywhere where someone has something to help, no matter how toxic it is, right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to die soon. Would you take them to have that kind of a treatment after that initial diagnosis? When the doctor says, let's do surgery, radiation, chemo, if there's a 50-50 chance you'll make it, right? Yeah. You're not going to do that. So you need something non-toxic. So what you have is you need to stimulate the immune system while it's healthy. That makes a lot of sense. By now, people buy into it. You're limited by the amount of time that you can treat, only 3 weeks, much too short for other drugs. You're not allowed to have anything toxic because the toxicity added to the already toxic treatments is just simply not acceptable. That leaves us as a sole remaining company or drug. Then you take the results that we have in head and neck cancer, which is one of the probably worst out there in terms of outcomes or lack of improvements. There's no reason why cytokines, which regulate our immune system, cannot work against most solid tumors. We already showed very nice data in cervical cancer, and we even showed our drug kills the human papillomavirus. So you might say, how can this drug kill cancer and the virus? It's not a drug, it's a copy of your immune system. Right? That's what your body does. And it teaches your body to recognize them. It's the intel that the police needs to take out the bad guys. And there are 3 billion immune cells running throughout our body right now. But if they don't know there's a cancer, you're screwed. Once we tell them there's a cancer in the tongue, let's say, those 3 billion immune cells will be mobilized and they come in and they attack, which is the only logical way that you can eliminate these very large tumors in a 3-week time period, which is what we've shown.
So again, I'm trying to simplify this for someone who may not have all the scientific background. So the cytokines, somehow they go into the bloodstream and activate the immune cells or tell them or trigger some sort of an alert that, look, there's a cancer cell, go and attack it.
But actually, we don't put it into the bloodstream. We put it next to the cancer.
Okay.
It's like lighting the cancer up.
Got you.
But with its own. So the important thing is the cytokines that you currently make and mine are identical. We can exchange them. The body will not know. That's important. There's no toxicity and it's interchangeable. So we're taking those, making those, and then giving them to the cancer.
Why was the decision made to administer it before surgery? What is the underlying biological rationale for that?
Well, just think of what the immune system looks like afterwards. So you've had the surgery. So let's take a step back. Where are the immune cells made? They're made in your lymph nodes.
Yeah.
Here, and down there. All right, the ones for head and neck cancer, would that matter, are here. Okay, what does the surgery look like? Horrible, taking part of your face off and taking out anything you might think is involved in your lymph nodes. Okay, that means you're destroying the factories of the immune system, and then essentially the bridges from the immune system to where the tumor was or where it comes back have been cut because you did surgery. All right, already doing it afterwards is not good. The second reason is radiation turns everything into lunar landscape. Nothing's alive. And then chemotherapy just makes it worse. So therefore, you've got to do it up front. Now comes a more scientific reason. Just to have an immune response is not enough. The immune response is like you have a key in your pocket, I have a key in my pocket. My key is not going to open your door, okay? I can make 1 million keys, and hopefully none of them will open my door. That's what your immune system is like. So people think I can build my general immunity, and that will help. Maybe a little bit, but you want to have a healthy immune system, but it needs to be specific to the cancer. TNF-alpha is one of the components in Multikine. TNF-alpha kills the cancer cells, and the antigen specific to the tumor that you have or that I have is released. The immune response now becomes specific to your antigen and in my body to my antigen. So therefore, it will be a key that works at my house or your key at your house. If you cannot make it specific, it's like, a normal key will not open your front door. Then it's useless to have that immune response. In the case of other cancer drugs, they try a master. Let's say it works on 30% of patients. Yeah, but that still means leaves out 70% of people. In our case, we can cover everybody because the body on its own will make the immune response to the antigen that people have. And should the antigen change, which is one of the defense mechanisms of a tumor, it mutates, right? It changes. Then the body continues to change with it. makes new.
Right.
So it's complicated. And in fact, you thought this was complicated. In fact, we're making this very simple. But it's a novel concept that is body-owned, that is non-toxic, and that we have shown in the largest clinical trial in head and neck cancer to not only be safe, but produce massive survival benefit in a defined population. Not everybody, right? So, but think about the two. Remember I said the two guys coming through the door, the doctor doesn't know which one will die. Now we know.
Yes.
We know the guys on the left will live, probably be cured, because 73% at 5 years. 5 years generally called a cure. And the ones over there, well, we're not going to be able to help them.
Yeah, understood.
It's great now. It's wonderful. It's what we all want. We want that information to tell us. And by the way, for insurance companies and reimbursement, it's the best, because you're not wasting money on patients who are not going to have a benefit. You know in advance that these patients are going to have a real benefit. It's not a month of extra life or something, the symptoms are delayed. No, they live for a long time.
Yeah.
It's the gold standard.
Right.
Why don't give up? And by the way, that's why the Saudis are interested.
Yeah.
They're seeing that. They are not procedure. There's a big problem we have in a lot of Western countries. Form over substance, right? The UK has the same thing. There are people who want to make things happen, but form over substance. It has to be presented in a certain ways, in a certain form, where the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And if you haven't done it that way, the application is sent back to you, no matter how perfect it is, right?
Yeah.
You've probably experienced that. Exactly. Everybody has experienced it. That's bullshit. It doesn't help the cancer patients. Yeah. Well, the Saudis have said, maybe it should be done differently. We want to bring benefit to our people.
Yeah. And Geert, coming to phase 3 trial, your phase 3 trial made headlines when it missed the primary endpoints in 2021. How do you explain what happened and what you've learned from that experience?
Well, we did the study exactly as it has to be done. People said, oh, you should have done the study differently. You couldn't do it differently. You give our drug before surgery, radiation, chemo. What we saw in our study was that the people who had our drug, surgery, and radiation had massive survival, but the other half that had chemo added didn't work. So it missed the primary endpoint. For the patients who had no chemo, it's fantastic. So we had also pre-specified that you should analyze the study in the two halves, because no one's ever done a study like this, right? Yeah. So, and we didn't know, when you give these people surgery, at the time you couldn't tell who was going to get only radiation or radiation plus chemo. So we had pre-specified that you would analyze the study as separate arms, which is what you have to do in a study. And the regulator said, no, since you missed the primary endpoint, all of the pre-specifications are null and void. Now, but think about this one. During the time of the first Trump administration, Jonathan Gottlieb was the head of the FDA, and they gave many accelerated approvals on much less data than we had. And then the companies afterwards would do a confirmatory study. So if something was very promising and reasonably safe for a horrible disease, they said, we want to bring that to people because it looks really good and cancer is a horrible disease. And then if it didn't work, then you would have to take the drug off the market. And by the way, most of these things worked out very well. Our study, unfortunately, ran into regulatory changes. During the Biden administration, and by the way, this is normal at FDA, it's a pendulum. It goes stricter and not so strict, back and forth all the time. We ran into changes to the FDA law that said that to get that accelerated approval, you have to the term is substantially enroll the confirmatory study. 212 people. Well, unfortunately, and by the way, that was great, because if FDA asks you to do a confirmatory study, it means they've reviewed the data, they have found your drug to be safe, and that means they also feel that there's sufficient benefit and upside to expose more patients to your drug. Because if the drug was useless, they would say, no, don't bother us anymore. So unfortunately, we ran into what has been the worst biotech market of all times. And so we then had difficulty raising the capital for that study. And it's not that much, it's $30 million. It was such a horrible capital market for biotech. People can look, not just our stock, pretty much all of them got decimated. And so we haven't been able to start that study. But that's what we have to do for the US in order to bring the drug to market in the US. Maybe there will be some changes with the new administration. Not sure exactly, but You never know. I mean, one tweet one day can change the world.
Yeah. And I know you've partly answered this question already, but you've reported constructive feedback from the FDA on confirmatory registration study. What does that trial look like, and how will it be different from the past?
We will now select not everybody not every one of these patients. We will select only those that meet certain criteria. Okay, so we will just simply say, we use people with black hair and brown eyes, between, under 6 feet. And everybody who's not that, they're not going to get our drug, because we have identified who are the people who have the most benefit. And basically what we realized is, number one, when you add chemotherapy, it kills the immune response that is created by our drug, which is fairly logical. Immunotherapy is a poison that kills. And this is cisplatin. It's one of the worst. And the second thing we believe we found is, we all know it from our own life. Some people are simply too far gone to be helped.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just some people have a weak immune system, or their general health is not good. So we're eliminating the people who get the chemo, and we're eliminating the people who are basically too far gone to be helped.
Yeah.
So the data in those people shows that 5-year survival is 73%, and 5 years is generally considered to be a cure, versus 45%. We're not talking a small difference. We're talking exponentially large difference. So then people would say, is that statistically significant? And the answer is, it's extremely statistically significant. It's 0.05 is statistically significant. So we're much, much better. And there's a huge margin of error for an approval. And then FDA measures these things to something called a hazard ratio. You want to be below 1 at 0.8, 0.7. They give you approval. We're at 0.35. So again, we are massively better than what you need to be. The upper limit of that calculation is a 0.66. So therefore, you have a 95% chance of being well below 0.7, because you'd be at 0.6. So all of this, what that tells you is that we have a 95% or better chance of being able to replicate these results. It takes time, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Again, what we hope to do is, by becoming a commercial enterprise selling drug in Saudi Arabia, I think it should at least significantly improve our standing valuation. We then hope to use money from the sale there and attract additional capital to do that confirmatory study. Once that confirmatory study is done and you become standard of care in head and neck cancer, then, realistically, we'll be bought out by that time.
Right.
And we should be bought out, because it's not about the money. There will be plenty of money that will be made. The real vision here is that in the future, I won't say all, but the majority of cancers today, the first treatments are surgery, radiation, chemo. It should be our drug first, and then surgery, radiation, and chemo. Or maybe you can eliminate the chemo if you use our drug, right? So you have to put it out there. There's really no reason why cytokines, which currently regulate your immune system, cannot work against other cancers. They're not specific for head and neck cancer, right? They react to whatever disease you have.
Yeah.
Maybe you can then find, remember I told you this drug killed human papillomavirus? Maybe then, and that's why it needs to be a big company, they can develop Multikine as an antiviral drug in certain cases.
Yes.
And then you will have, instead of 3 treatment modalities in cancer, you will have 4. That's the real vision. That's why we've never given up. The data has always supported it. It's just that people don't really want change. You practically have to force it on them.
I think that's a major breakthrough if the data is compelling enough, and I'm sure it'll be.
No, the data is already compelling enough. That's the crazy thing. You would think with data like this, everybody would come running. But the industry has so many problems, right? Funding problems. And then Trump talks about lowering drug prices. I don't think that would be an issue for us, because if you have true benefit in terms of survival, then you're justified in charging a good amount, right? Because there's a true societal benefit. Then tariffs and all the uncertainties in the world. No, that is the great difficulty. Half of bringing a drug to market people think most of it is science. No, that's not true.
Mhm.
It is simply Wall Street, surviving Wall Street.
And coming to the topic of Saudi Arabia, and you recently filed for breakthrough medicine designation in Saudi Arabia, what exactly would that designation mean in terms of patient access and reimbursement?
Let me take a step back. Saudi Arabia is a fascinating situation. So, there's certain ideas that people have of Saudi Arabia. From everything I can tell, it is a rapidly changing country. I think the pace is now set by the Crown Prince, who I believe is about 35 years old, and a lot of younger people there who basically went to the same schools we all went to, right? And probably went to the same parties and whatever. They are now starting to move into positions of power and say. So in our discussions, we've always noted that a lot of women were a big change, right? When we couldn't drive and all that kind of stuff. So it's a rapidly changing country. It's a very vibrant region. And so the Crown Prince and the King, we have to remember, it's a kingdom. Presumably, you want to be on the good side of the Crown Prince. They set a vision out for Saudi Arabia called Vision 2030. And obviously, it includes AI, because when Trump went to the Middle East, they all signed up to mega AI deals. Yeah. But the other part of the vision is healthcare. They, number one, want to provide their citizens with good healthcare. Yes, that's the job of a king. That's how you stay a king. You make your people happy. Yeah. The second thing is they want to become a biotech hub, regionally and then globally. So we're working with people who help them put the regulations together for the FDA, which are modeled on the US and European regulations. So we're not talking here, Zimbabwe regulation. This is, I want to make the point, the Saudi Arabian FDA is considered to be, I looked it up, WHO maturity level 4, which is the same as the US FDA. And so we had meetings with them, but I think they're using the Trump 1 first administration approach. If something is safe, check, and offers a clear benefit to our citizens, but has not checked all of the procedural requirements of the West. Right. Then we in Saudi Arabia are interested in offering that to our citizens. However, there's something else that goes with it. They want you to teach their local companies. So, in fact, we were told you should apply with a local company, and we did that. The company we're working with is highly regarded, Allah Pharmaceuticals, and I think it's the idea that other countries have employed, which is they want you to do joint ventures so that companies in Saudi Arabia can learn. Because you got to understand, while we're a little company, ours is one of these very highfalutin cancer drugs, right? Novel, something that few people are ever exposed to. I have to tell you, the negotiations with FDA and the other regulators were fascinating. There was one European regulator we met with who said they'd spent over a day discussing our situation because they'd never seen anything like it. It's, except for when the stock price gets beaten up, it's very stimulating.
Yes, indeed. A real breakthrough, I would say, in terms of the approach and the innovation. It's just incredible.
We need innovation, right? We need people who think outside of the box, people who don't care about screwing up the system. Because we need to, excuse my language here, screw up the system on a regular basis. The system gets slow and fast.
Yeah. And many in the audience may not understand the distinction between designation and approval. How do you explain that difference to patients and families?
In my mind, the breakthrough designation is akin to an accelerated approval. So they make a determination that your drug is a true breakthrough and should be made available to the citizens of Saudi Arabia. And I believe that also includes the expats. So you're talking well over 50 million people. And then you have biomedical tourism from India. Potentially you have a lot there where you have a lot of head and neck cancer, right?
Yeah.
And maybe even from the US, from Europe. But that's the determination. So that's what we submitted. So in October, we should find out. We're hopeful because we had very good meetings with them.
Right.
And then what that leads to also is the following. So many people say, Saudi Arabia has money, let's go get money there. It's like you're one of 1 million people a year going to Saudi Arabia waiting to get money, right?
Yeah.
It's like you go to see BlackRock. You're one of 1 million people. You need something special, something that helps you stand out. Or more importantly, what people forget about, Trust. No matter how much internet we do these days, if you don't trust me, you're not going to give me a cent. And trust is not established just like that. You have to earn it. So we're hoping to show to people in Saudi Arabia that we are for real, that we can be trusted, we're dedicated, we have a great drug. We'll be working with one of the premier pharma companies. Their regulators will have reviewed everything and hopefully have said positive things permitting the sale of the drug. And with it, then, I think you will have shown yourself, and then obviously you help the Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia. And with it, you show yourself to be a positive influence, trustworthy company. And that, because everybody knows that if you bring this drug to the market in the end, there will be a lot of money will be made.
Yeah.
But so I'm hoping that maybe in the end, all of our future developments, or a lot of our future developments, will then be financed through companies in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Because in the US, they're all focused on AI.
Great.
And then we bring the drug to market, we make a difference. I lie on my deathbed and say, okay, against all odds, we made it happen.
How do you envision Multikine fitting into today's evolving treatment landscape, particularly with PD-1 inhibitors now standard in certain head and neck cancers?
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. PD-1 only works if you have PD-1. So you may have it, you may not have it. 30% of people have PD-1. So if my job is, if the drug inhibits PD-1, but there's no PD-1, it doesn't work. So we know, call us the contra to the PD-1 inhibitors. Multikine has been shown to work in the 70% that don't have PD-1 or don't have much. So in diseases where there's been progress with PD-1, we're the other side for the people who don't have PD-1. That's the beautiful thing.
Right. And if I were to understand it with my limited knowledge, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, I believe every cancer cell has got some PD-1 receptors.
No.
And no?
No, only 30% do.
Only 30%.
30% are high level, and then it depends, I think somewhere about 20% have some low level, but I think in our study was 50% that had zero PD-1.
Right.
The literature supports that.
Right. Inhibitors are effective only in those cancer cells which has got abundant amount of PD-1 receptor.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So let's take a step back. PD-1 is on cancer cells. It's a defense mechanism of a tumor cell.
Right.
And it shuts down the immune system in its vicinity. So I'm simplifying here. So the checkpoint inhibitors, the number one drugs in the world, Keytruda, Opdivo, whatever, they block the PD-1 so that the tumor can no longer shut down the immune system in the area. And that has produced great results and has made them the biggest drugs of all time. The problem is, the great majority of patients don't have PD-1 or have just a little bit. So if my benefit comes from shutting down a lot of PD-L1, what do I do when there's no PD-1? It's nothing to latch onto.
Right.
It doesn't work. In fact, FDA in the last year has withdrawn a number of approvals that they made earlier for PD-1 inhibitors and limited them to high levels of PD-1. Because the data is very clear. If there is no PD-1, a PD-1 inhibitor has nothing to inhibit.
Right. So going back to your analogy of billions of immune cells scouting for dangers or cancer cells, so the cancer cells almost wear a cloak to look like a normal cell. And that's what PD-1 does. And the PD-1 inhibitors enable...
No, that's already there, right? The PD-1 inhibitors, already cancer cells kind of hide from the immune system, whether there's PD-1 or no PD-1.
Okay.
It's just that lots of PD-1 on a cancer cells makes it hard for the immune system to attack the cancer cell. So the basic problem is you can't see the terrorist. You don't know what the guy looks like. You don't know where to find him. So hiring another 100,000 police officers doesn't do any good. You need the intel. And then if it turns out that terrorist is actually in an area full of IEDs and who knows what, then you have a second problem because the terrorist is well prepared and you can't take him out easily, right?
Right.
But the main problem is you don't even know what the guy looks like. For the main problem for the immune system is, you could be taking all these medicines to make your immune system strong, sleep well, and still die rapidly from cancer because your immune system never realized that there was a cancer in the first place. And I bet you that some of the listeners have had personal experiences where these super healthy people suddenly died quickly.
And talking about broader reflections, Cell-Sci has had moments of investor criticism and scientific skepticism. How do you personally deal with doubt, both from the outside world?
Scientific skepticism is bullshit, sorry, okay? Because, for example, our data has always been reviewed by the regulators. They have all of the data. And if the regulators are fine, then I don't know what someone else thinks out there, okay? So check to the side. Investor skepticism is very simple. My stock price goes up tomorrow, people think I'm great. I might be sitting at the beach, by the way, right? I might be partying, not doing anything, but they think I'm doing a lot because the stock price went up. If then I'm working super hard, working on great deals, and the stock price goes down the next day, they think I'm an ass and I'm not doing anything. In fact, I'm probably a liar and a cheat. So I call that the dog is wagging the tail. The share price is driving the opinions, okay? And that is, in fact, the hardest part because people measure me by the share price when we all know that in biotechnology, the share price cannot be a true determinant because if you believe that there's an efficient market, that concept relies on everybody having the same information. But they can't have the information because it's confidential information that is held by the regulators.
Yeah. And we've seen the examples of turnaround in biotech, for instance, Celgene or Amgen.
Yes. No, look, the story of all of those companies is George Rathman, the founder of Amgen, says you must become a true biotech company. You must have walked through the valley of death, meaning near bankruptcy, several times. And by the way, when that happens, it really builds character because you lie awake at night and you say, shit, excuse my language here, but I mean, literally, I'm speaking clearly. This is what you know.
Sure.
And it's scary because we think that the world is logical. We know it's not. We experience it every single day that it's not logical. We still think that it's logical. And therefore, if you have good data, X, Y, and Z should happen, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so those are the time periods that you have to make it through. But now comes the really nice thing. I mean, I've been through time periods where our stock was horribly beaten up. No one cared. And then literally in the period of 6 months, our stock went up 10. For those periods to happen, you must have been grossly undervalued first. And the undervaluation comes because no one cared to look.
Yeah, very well said. And Geert, your journey highlights resilience over decades. What advice would you give to leaders or scientists pursuing long, uncertain paths in drug development?
You have to be crazy. I'm not crazy. Our whole team is a bunch of unusual people. I believe that they're all highly intelligent, very educated, but they have to be crazy to be willing to willingly endure these ups and downs. I can tell you, most people are driven by their stock options and then moving on to another company, etc. When was it? 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, our stock hit a high and I was on paper worth $100 million. In hindsight, I should have sold $10, $20 million. But no, I held myself to the stupid notion that as a CEO, I have to do better. Right? And no, my people didn't sell either. Obviously, then the stock went down. Is it, they always, no matter how thin you make that pancake, it always has two sides to it. I now say I should have sold. It's stupid. But by the fact that I didn't sell, maybe certain people, maybe I got more credibility. But let's be honest, in the end, your credibility comes from one thing. Stock price goes up, they like you. Stock price goes down, they think you're doing something stupid.
And beyond Multikine, you also have the Leaves platform. What excites you most about its future potential?
Look, essentially, you can redirect the immune response. There are multiple parts of an immune response. So the first thing you may remember, I told you at the beginning, the immune response needs to be specific to your, it's like your key opens your door, my key opens my door, even though it's apparent that they're keys. Now it gets even more complicated. You need to make an immune response either this way or that way, or keep it simple right now. For example, a virus cannot be killed on its own. You need to kill the cell that's making the virus. So that's one immune response, and then you have other immune responses. What that technology allows you to do is, in about 90% of cases we've tested, it allows you to drive the immune response, not just to be specific to a person, but also to be the immune response that is the effective immune response. If you make the wrong immune response against a virus, then it cannot kill the cell that's producing the virus. So you need to make the right immune response so that the immune response can kill the cell that produces the virus, or else the cell just keeps on producing more virus, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really, really exciting. Right now, I must admit, the focus is multikine. Focus is to bring it, commercialize it in Saudi Arabia. I think that there's a good chance that that will lead to more opportunities around the world. Then we're a commercial enterprise, and we should be valued differently. We can use that money and recognition to fund the work for FDA. We can satisfy the US regulators, and if things go well, we could be on the market in the US in 2 years.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, exactly.
And finally, if you could step forward 10 years, what impact would you hope Cell-Sci and Multikine have left on the world?
I think Multikine should be used in head and neck cancer, breast cancer, melanoma, cervical cancer, so many other cancers, because we know that the treatment of surgery, radiation, chemo, all of those only work in X% of people, right?
Yeah.
But we cannot even know in advance who the X% will be. So in comparison, I use this the following. Your car is stuck in the snow, and there are 3 people, surgery, radiation, chemo, pushing, and you can't get it out. Along walks this great-looking guy called Multikine.
Right.
Hey, buddy, can you help us? So say, oh, yeah, sure, let me help you. And now Multikine is the 4th person pushing, and suddenly the car is out of the snow. That's what we seek to achieve. Oh, Multikine alone will do it. No. That's simplistic. Cancer is a very complicated disease. You need to combine things to make sure the tumor can never escape, because once it escapes, you will die.
Very well explained. And Geert, that brings us to the end of our today's conversation. And I want to thank you for joining me today and for sharing not just the science behind Multikine, but the story, the resilience, I keep saying, and the perspective that comes with carrying a vision for decades. What you've shared is more than data and trial outcomes. It's a reminder of what it takes to keep going when the road is uncertain, when the critics are loud, when the patients who might one day benefit are still waiting. And for our listeners, I hope today's conversation showed you that drug development is not a straight line. It's filled with setbacks, breakthroughs, and above all, conviction. Whether or not you work in science, there's something universal here. The courage to stay committed to an idea that matters, even when the world isn't sure yet. Geert, thank you for your time, for your honesty, for your contribution to this field, and thank you to everyone for listening. This has been Drug Diaries. I'm Kaushik Trivedi, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, Geert.
Thank you so much.